So we've got a couple new frames, a couple new things to talk about, and let's start off with the Floss 2.1, which actually I don't think I've actually made a video about. But okay, so this is the Floss 2.1, and it's a pretty interesting frame, pretty special frame. And so where this came from was, so the Floss series, when I first made it, it had two primary concepts to it. Concept number one was that it didn't have a sandwich plate, but like over the arms. It had just the bottom plate and just the top plate. And my whole concept was that the bottom and top plates will brace the entire frame, and there's no need for a sandwich any longer. So just simplify the whole frame. It also had independent arms that were very, 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 very cheap. And that was really the attraction to the frame, is that the arms were so cheap that it was so compelling that you couldn't help not build one, because they're $2 arms. And I actually expected other companies to start making frames that used those arms, but nobody actually did, which is a little depressing. Anyways, fast forward to today, people have gotten much better at flying. People are very used to spending a little bit more money for their frames, and they prefer not to have a frame that breaks. They prefer to have a frame that kind of holds up and doesn't break so easily. And if you have a Floss 2, you know that it does not break very easily, but the perception is that it breaks easily, which is incorrect, but that's the perception. So I've kind of stemmed away from that a little bit, and I've had these arms drawn for probably 6-7 months now, but I haven't actually had them cut and started testing with them, because I didn't think people would want to pay the extra money for the much more expensive arms. So the special thing about the Floss 2.1 is that it has boomerang arms, or wishbone arms. I don't know which one we're calling it, but they're connected arms. So the two front arms are one piece, and the two rear arms are one piece. And they're also 5mm thick. So when pilots started asking for arms that were more durable, we moved straight to 5mm on the Floss 2, which I was very much against, because with arms that are 5mm, now you're in danger of breaking the main plate, because the main plate's only 3mm, and the arms are much stronger than the main plate. So in a hard crash, you'll probably end up bending or flexing the main plate, and slowly over time you'll end up breaking the main plate. And that's actually what happened to Doma FPV's, a bunch of Doma FPV squads, after he's careened them into iron gates a couple of times. So we moved to the connected arms, which are in 5mm, and the 5mm is wicked durable. So all I really did was kind of tweak the design a bit to get the 5mm arms to be very durable and as light as I could reasonably get it without sacrificing too much durability. So let's weigh it. 65.9 grams, or 66 grams. So the Floss 2.1 with 5mm arms in the 5-inch version is 66 grams. And yeah, I was personally pretty impressed with the weight, because I didn't expect to be able to get a 5mm thick arm frame well below 70 grams, but it is there. And then when I started experimenting further with the 5mm wishbone connected arms, I started doing kind of crazy things, which I hadn't have thought of before. So I was a little worried about extending the arms, because I thought they might get floppy, because they are very skinny, and because I don't have the second screw, the arm is actually a lot longer than the Floss 2. But then I did this. I made the 7-inch version, which is under 80 grams, 79.8 grams. And this is what I intend to be my long-range kind of frame, long-range setup for either 6-inch or 7-inch props. And it's really good for long-range because, well, people have already been using the 6-inch Floss 2 for long-range, but the reason why it's so favorable is because you can put the GoPro on top with your GPS on top, no problem. You have all this space, it's very light already. You can put the battery underneath, and it's just a very easy setup to go with long-range because it's just so light. And the 7-inch arms in 5mm, the way I've designed them, they feel similarly as durable as the 5-inch or the 6-inch version of the Floss 2.1. So I'm seriously shocked by that. So once I did that, once I started testing out, unfortunately I don't have appropriate motors for 7-inch frame just yet. I'm still waiting on getting some motors. I don't know if anybody knows of like a 2606 or 2607 that's like 1000 kV, please let me know, because I really need motors for my 7-inch frame, and I really want to do 6S, because what's the point of going 7-inch if I don't get the absolute maximum benefit of going with 7 inches, which is going with 6S and 1000 or 900 kV. But all right, once I finished testing those and playing with the wishbone arms and actually understanding how they work, I took it a step further. And I made this. This is an acro frame. You've probably seen it on my Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram and other places, you've probably seen it on my Instagram. It is under 82 grams. This frame has a couple of very special components. And oh, by the way, you may have already guessed this, but this is the frame that's for sale on quadlab.io. And this is the special frame that is on there because I designed it so quickly, and I went through like 4 or 5 revisions so quickly because I was so excited about it that I didn't really get a whole lot of time to test the frame. So that's why it's on QuadLab, although I have learned by now not to put out frames that are relatively unfinished, and this is not unfinished. I have definitely gone through a bunch of revisions to get it finished, and it is definitely up to my standards. But there's a couple of super interesting things going on with this frame. Now, I'll get to that in a minute. Let me discuss a little bit about the Dragana. So the Dragana Project, if you watched, I think one of my other videos, I discussed it a little bit. It was a project where we were working with some really top-level pilots and giving them a frame that they wanted. And so when we started talking to them about the frame and the geometry and what they wanted, they said they wanted a much smaller X. They wanted a short and they wanted an X. And I was very much against that after doing the extensive testing that I've done. But I gave them what they wanted, and this is what it is. It's a shorter fuselage body for the Floss 2.1. So it uses the same arms as the Floss 2.1, but it's just shorter. So it's almost a complete X, like almost exactly an X because of the shorter body, but it's not. It's still like 5 millimeters longer than it is wide. And that was just I couldn't help that because of the geometry of the arms, because it has the wishbone arms. And it has a very awesome canopy that goes over the top of it. It's very, very cool looking. After a couple months of these pilots flying the frame, they came back and said all of the same things that I told them from the very beginning that I don't recommend. But there are a lot of people that want an X frame, even though I am strongly against just a straight small X. A bigger X is fine, but a small X I'm very much against because of the front to back distance between the prop. You need prop separation between front to back just to make it easier to fly, honestly. Like, I'll talk about it in a minute, but so what happened was people started saying that they still want the short X, or they still want the near X frame. So it's still coming out, but I recommend people use the 6-inch arms on the small body so that they get a similar X feel, but they get more prop separation because it makes it easier to fly, which I'll get to in a minute. So we'll talk about the Dragana a little bit more later. But it's actually not just the frame. It's like a whole kit. It's not like just a frame. It's more than a frame. So let's talk about this frame. This frame is really cool because I've put a couple of, I guess you can call them innovations in the frame that I haven't done in the past. And I'm trying to simplify kind of everything that I make these days. And so this is what I came up with. This is using the 6-inch Floss 2.1 arms, the 6-inch version of the Floss 2.1 arms, with a fuselage that I designed for it to make a 5-inch acro frame. And here's what it looks like fully built. And if you couldn't tell, the GoPro mount comes from Brain3D, brain3d.co. I promote him because I really hugely, enormously appreciate the work that he does. He adds so much value to so many frames, and he has such a great service for people. So I really love the guy. Please go to his site because he's awesome, and he does cool stuff like this kind of print stuff. Anyways, okay, so this is what it looks like built, and there's a couple of really cool innovations that I put in here, which one of those is using the 6-inch arms for a 5-inch frame, and it's definitely not weak at all. It's actually, because it's a really short dimension here, it's actually very similar dimension as the Dragana. Yeah, it's about the same as the Dragana. It's with the 6-inch arms though, not the 5-inch arms. It feels wickedly durable. And the other innovation is, well, it's not really an innovation. I've been trying to simplify everything. So the top plate and the bottom plate are actually the same plate. So you're not gonna get 2 different plates for the top and bottom. And if you break one, you just buy the same one. And that makes it just easier for us to manage inventory and easier for everybody else out there as well. And you really don't need a different bottom plate. I mean, the chances of you cracking a pole right here in the center and breaking your camera is so minimal that I honestly don't care. And if you really care, you can put a little bar of whatever you want between the front there. But in the end, it actually does make the frame cheaper because it's so much easier to manage in the shop. The other interesting thing about the frame is that when you look at the bottom, it probably looks very, very sparse. And it's got this brace for a very specific reason. So if I didn't have this brace, the arms would actually break the bolts much easier because the bolts would feel stress in all directions. So when it has this brace, the only direction that the bolts feel any stress in is the shear direction. and shear force on these bolts is much higher than the torsional or whatever other strain that the bolts might feel. And that is actually an issue with now the Floss 2.1. People aren't really shearing bolts all the time. I mean, there are freaking tough 12.9 hardness steel bolts are the strongest bolts we could find. They are much stronger than titanium. I do not recommend you switch the bolts out for titanium or aluminum to save weight. It's just a total waste of time. You're going to break a bunch of stuff. Don't mess with that at all. Please use the hardware that comes with the frame, because it's very carefully chosen hardware for the frame. And so Doma FPV, I don't know anybody that's broken the latest revision of the 5mm, 5-inch, or 6-inch arms, but Doma FPV has run into a lot of poles racing, and so he has sheared a couple of bolts. So that's just a problem that you're going to have to live with. I mean, the bolt is so tough. For that to be the weak link I'm pretty comfortable with that. And in order to make it stronger, I'd have to move to M4 bolts, which is non-standard, and nobody wants that. Okay, so back to this frame. So it's awesome. It is not a wide X like the Flowride. And I actually kind of apologize for making the Flowride first and not experimenting with these Wishbone's arms earlier, because as I think I showed you, this frame is 82 grams, and I would say that it is more durable than my Flowride. And it just feels so unbelievably solid in the hand when you hold it. And the problem with the Flowride was that it was good, and it had a good distance between the front and back props, but it was still a wide X. It wasn't like a stretch X or a true X. It was a little bit of a wide X, and I personally like to fly a little bit faster, so I really wanted a longer X. And the reason I like longer X, not like super duper long, but just a little bit longer. I just need separation between the front and back props, either a bigger frame or a longer X. That lets you move quicker forward without adding so much tilt. And in acro, we don't like flying with super crazy high tilt. We actually like flying with lower tilt. So this is a 30-degree tilt on the GoPro, and that's the maximum tilt that I want, because if I have any more, then it's going to look weird when I start doing rolls and flips, and it's like you have to cross coordinate. It becomes more of a hassle. I really prefer lower tilt, and most people like lower tilt in acro. So I really wanted that longer dimension to be able to fly forward quickly. And this frame really gave that to me, and that was what I was most upset about with the Flowride, because if I was to extend it further, it would make it weaker, it would make it heavier, and it was already at the 90-something 5-gram weight limit, and it was beyond what I wanted it to be. So that's why this frame came about, because when I saw the arms, I was really impressed with the strength. And this is using 6-inch arms for a 5-inch frame, and then there is another version that is using 7-inch arms as a 6-inch frame, and that's what you're looking at right here. This is the 6-inch frame that's in the other video, which I'm going to put up, or I may have already put up, and it's awesome. It actually feels more durable than the 5-inch version because of the way I've designed the 7-inch arms. It's like this is my favorite setup right now, and I'll talk about 6-inch versus 5-inch again in a minute, but talk about a couple other things. So this frame is going to be the one on quadlab.io. You can still pre-order it. We are going to be putting in the final order, I think, tomorrow, and we're hoping to receive it by Friday or Saturday, and we will ship out by next week. The price of the frame on QuadLab is going to go up $5, I think, and yeah, you can still pre-order it. Other innovations with the frame is, so these holes that you see in the side here, these holes that are kind of like you would wonder what are they for, they're actually for infinity tubes. So these are the antenna tubes that I forgot who made, but somebody made them, and they're really awesome. And so I started putting these holes in my 3-inch or 2-inch frames for this very purpose. And so I started putting them in all my designs because they're so freaking useful. And actually, I might have a revision in the future where the Floss 2.1 top plate has these holes in it as well. And you can use them or you can not use them, and that's the real benefit, is that you can use them or you can not use them. If you are using a non-crossfire setup, then they're really convenient because they're right there, and you can just put a wrap of heat shrink around the standoff and the tube to hold it in place, and it's as good as it gets. It's the best possible antenna setup. The only better way it would be if it was like out in the open, far away from everything. But like the GoPro's here, and then the end of the antenna, which is what actually senses anything, is going to be like off at an angle like this. So it's just really convenient. So that's the frame. I may talk more about it a little bit later, but let's now talk a little more about the Dragana. So remember I said that it's not just the frame, it's more of a whole race, not ecosystem, but I guess you can say setup. So something I've been talking about with Sergio is that there's all these ready-to-flies coming out, and ready-to-flies are really not, I mean, the Emax one is pretty good, the Hawk 5 is pretty good, but they're not really as favorable as we would want them to be. They're not something that a pro pilot would really want to fly. It would be adequate, it's perfectly fine, but it's not something that we really want. We really want like the highest level racer. And honestly, when you compare a top level racer, top spec racer, the latest 6S tech to like a pre-built, even the Hawk 5, the price difference is not any different. It's very much the same. Even if you like look at the Diatone Ready to Fly, which I don't know if it's actually out yet, but that is going to be in the $230 range. And so here's what we've done. We've put together a kit that is all the highest, latest, bestest stuff. So the kit is going to be using this setup. So it's going to have which I didn't take anything apart to show you, but it'll have the Hyperlite F4 with the OSD, the new Hyperlite board. It has the Acon 6S ESC, so you can run 6S if you want. It comes with the Floss 2.1. I don't know if we'll have like the actual shorter option. I think the 2.1 is going to be much more popular. It will come with a Unify. It will come with some props, and I think an antenna as well. And it will come with a choice of motors. So you get to choose if you want the high KV or the low KV for 6S. So everything else is the same. Oh yeah, it also comes with the, not the Predator, it comes with the Arrow. Foxier Arrow as well. And it's going to be $229. So it's basically all the top level stuff for $229. That's the price that we've kind of come up with. And we tried to get it at $199, but the drop in value, it was so extreme that it wasn't even worth it. And we did make a $199 like spec kit, but it just wasn't worth it at all. So we just kept it as the highest level and one kit only, not multiple kits. And the only option is going to be motors. And depending on which motor you choose, maybe we'll have a drop down that will let you choose any motor you want, and it'll just adjust the price accordingly. But that's the whole concept. The concept is that it's going to be one setup that you can just direct your friends or whoever that's asking to, which is the highest of the highest setup. I mean, it's like what the top pilots, at least that Piroflip, fly. I don't know if everybody else flies, but they're pretty much, all the stuff is pretty much similar. So we just put all the best stuff that we had in a kit and we give it to you. And the only difference is that it's not pre-built. You have to build it yourself. We will also have a 3-inch kit, and the price point for that is $139. It's going to come with the SpeedX stack. It'll come with the 1407 Hyperlite motors. It will have the Arrow camera, and it will come with the new Tooth Fairy frame that I think is now on sale as well. And now let's take a little break from that FPV stuff and talk about these, which I can't even fit in the frame. Okay, so these are the DJI Goggles. And you might ask, what on earth is DJI doing? So I think they intended these goggles to be used with a Phantom or a Mavic or something of that sort. And maybe it's really good for that, but it also has an analog option. And I'm sorry, these goggles are just awful for FPV. Don't get them at all. But they do have one very, very, very cool feature, which I'll tell you in a minute. But let me tell you about the goggles first. So they're extremely bulky, extremely heavy. When you put them on your head, you can't move your head because the thing that hangs off your head just wobbles around and you can't see anything. And this goggle actually has a screen up here, and it has a mirror that reflects it into your eye, similar to the Eachine goggles that they recently made, except that these are actually good. So a couple of really amazing things I can say about this is that it is a DJI product, and as a DJI product, it's essentially an Apple product, and the quality of this is so far beyond anything in hobby. It's just mind-blowing, and it's so upsetting that we have nothing that's of even remotely this kind of quality. That being said, it is probably the wonkiest product in FPV. I mean, come on, like what are they, like this thing comes apart, like what on earth is this? I don't even know. I think there's a battery back. I think the battery's actually back here. And so, like, just nothing about this is straightforward. The buttons are kind of all over the place. This thing moves the diopters of the screen in and out, and it only has one screen up there. This side is a touchpad, And it's so annoying because anytime you go to touch the goggles, the menus come up and start changing stuff in your face, and you don't want it. They could have just put a joystick on there, it would have sufficed. It doesn't do anything more than a joystick. So I'm only using it for FPV, so keep that in mind. The button layout is really awful. The reception is so-so. It's not that bad. It's not that great. They even used an RP SMA antenna, so it's not even like a standard antenna. I don't even know why they would do that. The weirdest thing about it is probably that it has stereo speakers. I mean, what pair of goggles needs stereo speakers? It has a speaker on this side, it's got a speaker on this side. But there's one very cool thing about this goggle. It does have a DVR, and the DVR is 60 frames per second, which I was really impressed with. That, and in the analog view, there is no latency. I cannot detect any latency. So, I'm sorry, DJI. This is not for analog use. But thanks very much for the DVR. So there's one other thing I want to talk about. The screen in these goggles are actually really nice. It's just one big screen. It's a 1080p screen. It's huge. It's really huge. You still can't see, even though it's a box goggle, you still can't see the whole screen when you look through the lenses, no matter how far you push it on your face. But the screen gets cropped when you use it in analog, and that's fine. It's great, actually, that it's cropped, because I would actually wish it was smaller. But the problem is that the resolution that it runs at is probably 800 by 600, like in the center of the screen, and the field of view is probably about the same as Dominator HD's, the latest Dominator HD, which is great and all, but with screens that are like that and that large, you start seeing the lines between the pixels, and the pixels become kind of large because it's just so enlarged in your face. And the cameras we're using are so low resolution that it has to kind of blend multiple pixels to give you a line or a delineation between contrast, light and dark. And so what this ends up doing is it just makes your picture look really blurry. It doesn't look really sharp and crisp. Like my Dominator V3s, the screen is smaller than the HDs, but you cannot see the delineation between pixels. You can't see the line in the middle of the pixels. And that's one of the main reasons why I don't like the Dominator HDs, is because you can see those little lines. And you get used to it and it's fine and all, but when I know that I can have better, why would I have worse? And so that is the problem with these goggles. That's the main problem with these goggles for use with analog. There's a lot of problems, but that would be my primary problem if nothing else mattered. It would be that it's just not a nice view, and I'm only looking at the actual user experience of the view. Okay, that's enough about these goggles. All right, let's look at this quad again. This quad is actually using the, I don't even know what, I don't even know what it is. It's the HGLRC XJB F460 GTX 585, because we need all these letters and numbers. So HGLRC is a very funny company. I'll tell you kind of a secret that we experienced at ButterFlight, which is kind of funny. So this is the kit. It's $120, and that's what I'm using in this quad. It runs great. It's performed perfect. I haven't really put it to its limits yet, which I will in the next build. But here's what it is. It comes with a 60 amp 6S ESC. Look, it says that. It says it right there. It says there's 60 amp. Let me get it to focus. 60 amp. 60 dyno shot. Dyno shot. 60 amp. And the flight controller is fine. There's nothing wrong with the flight controller. Everything works fine. It works fine. It even comes with a big cap. But what it doesn't come with is gummies. So this is the funny thing. So the ESC and the flight controller has space for gummies. And so Sergio called HGLRC and is like, hey, we need gummies for the flight controller and the ESC. And they're like, no, our stuff is so good, you don't need gummies. Which is very funny because they're M4 hold. Anyways, okay. The VTX is a 600 milliamp VTX. It has an MMCX on it, which I massively appreciate. I do wish that the MMCX was mounted like 90 degrees, but as somebody recently told me, any SMA or MMCX that has that 90-degree joint on it is actually cuts your signal by a lot, which I didn't really care because I put a 90-degree joint on there anyways because I mounted it all weird. And it seems to be performing fine. The ESC is not 32-bit. It is a regular ESC, and everything works great on it. The board layout is not fantastic, but it works. So, I mean, HGLRC is very hit or miss, and this is another one of those possibly hit or miss things. And the next thing I'm going to be testing it on is this. So I'm going to be building a Floss 2.1 with the FPV AF 2507 motors, 2500 kV. I'm planning on putting 5S, and I'll test it on 6S also. But my primary purpose for this, I'm going to refocus the camera. My primary purpose for that quad is actually to put this on it. So this is a gimbal that I've had for a long time, like over a year now. This is a session gimbal, which I'm going to put it on the Floss 2.1 for, I think we're going to do like a commercial shoot, I think next weekend or something. But whatever it is, it's going to be pretty cool. And this quad is going to be a 6-inch, 2500 kV, a 5S, 6S quad, so it's going to be like wicked fast, so it might look really awesome, or I might just crash and just explode everything and break everything. Since we're talking about motors, this quad, the 7-inch quad, is using the Hawksky 2407 motors with 2200 kV and the HQ 6x4x3 props. This is a really nice setup. It's really fast and really efficient at cruising, although I still feel like it doesn't have the power to, I mean, like, you fly really like steep with this kind of a quad because it has so much power, and it's like you feel like you want more power because if you, when you punch it, it doesn't go up, it goes forward, and so it doesn't like stay off the ground. I did like scrape the ground and like crash really hard because I didn't realize that it wasn't going up. I do think it'll be a lot better on 5S, although I don't know if it'll actually, if the props will be okay with 5S. They might just like ring out like props do on super duper high kV. And the other motors I have is this. So these are the SunnySky 2306 2700 kV. I don't know why they sent me 2700 kV. I really don't know what to do with them. And on top of that, 2306. When you go wider and taller, I mean wider and shorter, it's not actually good to have high kV. You really want the lower kV so you can take advantage of the width of the motor. And so I have the diatone version of this motor on this quad, which is 2306 and 2450 kV in a redesign, which I really like. I think Diatone did a great, one thing that they did great is they really did a great job instructing SunnySky how they want their motor to be. So it's actually a really nice motor. This is the HQ 5.1 by 5.1 by 3, which is definitely my new favorite prop. It has replaced every other 5-inch prop that I use. It's not the most efficient, but it is like really good control and really good power and really good performance. So I'm really happy with this prop. And yeah, I'm really excited about that prop actually. And I think that's actually it for this time. I think that is actually it for once. I do have a lot of things that are on the way that are delayed, unfortunately, but they're coming very soon. One of them is the Dark Knight controller is on the way. I'm going to talk about that very soon. And yeah, that's it for now. Don't forget to floss. Take care. Bye-bye.